Hello, everyone. I'm Josh from Geek Ground Media, and this evening I am talking to the incomparable Gorf. Can you give us your full name, sir?
Jordan B. Gorfinkel. The B is for Batman, of course.
Isn't it Batman? Because there's no hyphen.
Well, you know the old joke. How do you know which superheroes are Jewish? You know that one?
You can tell by the ones that don't have the hyphen, right?
It's Goldman, Silverman, Batman, Superman,
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. Yep.
But yeah, can we get a little background on you for the uninitiated?
Yes. Born, Bar Mitzvah, Batman, and beyond.
The four Bs. So I
Yeah.
understand.
Somebody actually pitched a fifth B to me, but I can't remember what it is.
I'm not creative enough to think of one on the spot.
It'll come to us.
Absolutely, as all good things do. So, I understand that you were a former editor at DC Comics, and before that, you had your own newspaper strips.
So my background is that I went to Boston University, where I learned a little bit of everything and a whole lot of nothing, because you got to get a job in order to really learn what's going on in life. But I did get a wonderful liberal arts education that I implore everybody who is studying right now to get, because that's the reason to go to college, to broaden your mind, to understand the world, and take that into whatever occupation you're going to end up going into. You want a trade school? Well, then go be a mechanic or a plumber, or learn your trade, or go to art school. I went to art school after that. I went to School of Visual Arts for a year, and then realized that I was not cut out for school, that I'm more of an objective oriented person. And therefore, I needed to work to learn my craft, to learn my trade. And I was taking a class at School of Visual Arts in the evening, which was called Writing for the Comics with Denny O'Neil. And Dennis J. O'Neil was the editor and probably modern father of Batman. He's the guy who coined the phrase Dark Knight Detective. He's the one who discovered Frank Miller, and the list just kind of goes on. Of course, he created Ra's al Ghul and Talia and all those great characters, and he really brought Batman into the modern age in a way that continues to reverberate to this day. And I'm skipping a whole lot of stories here, but the bottom line is I got an internship at DC Comics a couple months into that, when I was absolutely flat broke and wondering what's going to happen. I got offered two jobs, one of which was to be the assistant editor on Batman under Denny O'Neil. And I spent close to 9 years being part of the Bat Guys. And we ran the Batman franchise to much commercial and critical success. And my big claims to fame are No Man's Land, which ran through all the Batman titles in 1999, as unexpectedly has become the basis for some major motion pictures, television, video games, etc. And I created Birds of Prey with the wonderful Chuck Dixon as writer and Gary Frank as the initial artist, and many other wonderful things. But the four Bat Guys, Denny O'Neil, our master and sensei, and Scott Peterson and Darren Vincenzo, my brothers from another mother, we had a wonderful decade. And I like to say that we had a wonderful through line also, because we started with basically Nightfall, and we ended with the spiritual successor 10 years later of No Man's Land, and it forms a really amazing decade arc.
That's a pretty phenomenal record. Um, yeah, I actually just started reading Nightfall myself, and it's pretty phenomenal how well it reads, especially with how maligned a lot of '90s books are in like the broader popular culture for like people that don't actually read comics and just kind of regurgitate whatever they hear on the internet. So, great job on y'all's behalf. Pretty timeless stuff, I must say.
Thank you. Yeah, with regard to the quote unquote maligning of 90s comics, the thing that we have to realize is that the 90s was a very painful birthing period, a rebirthing period for comics. We went from the beginning of the decade, when comics were still made in the old way, to comics at the end of the decade being made digitally in the new way. So in the beginning, we used to still take out our razor blades and cut pieces of Zipatone, which were the little dots on a plastic adhesive, and paste it onto physical boards that we used to photostat using a chemical process. We used to color by taking a photocopy of a page, taking Dr. Martin dyes and a brush, and literally painting what we wanted to see. Then we had, you can see behind me, See those three colors? The reason I have those three colors there is because that's RGB. That's well, technically it's not RGB. Technically it's CMY, CMYK. But those are the three fundamental colors of all colors. And we used to have to label percentages of those colors by drawing a little line to the color that we wanted and then label it over there on the side so that the separator, the color separator, who would make the physical printing presses do what we wanted them to do, would know exactly what color we intended that Dr. Martin dye painting to signify. And one of my party tricks these days is that I can now look at any color and tell you what its CMYK makeup is just by looking at it, because I spent so many years looking at that chart and pointing to colors that I kind of see the world in CMYK, or RGB as we did it back then. And then by the end of the decade, it was digital. And we were using all the colors under the rainbow in an early prototypical Photoshop kind of situation. And so when you see a lot of 90s comics, what you're seeing us is figuring out on monthly deadlines how to transition from analog to digital. And it's a little painful in places. And I think some of the pain is still very visible in the comics that you see today because, and this is a completely separate topic, but I believe that as good as some coloring can be, most coloring is really unfortunate because people are wonderful technicians. They know how to make all the sizzle and flash, but they do not know color theory. And therefore, when you look at it, it looks, to paraphrase my friend and boss and another mentor of mine, Mike Carlin, it looks like van art. But I digress.
I can definitely see where you're coming from with that. Um, I understand that we should just get into the meat of what we really want to talk about, the JewCE Awards and Juice as a whole. Would you mind giving our viewers some background on what that is specifically?
The wonderful Miriam Mora is the, and forgive me, I'm blanking on the name of the museum right now. Do you have the museum name written down?
Oh man, I was just looking at. Is it
the Jewish Museum of? Anyway, we'll get the name of the museum, but
Yeah.
she's the executive director.
Awesome.
And some years ago, Fabrice Sapolsky, a friend of mine who is an emigre from France and an amazing designer and comics creator, in addition to having his own publishing company now, he called Fair Square. So you can look it up, Fair Square Comics. And he had created a Jewish Comic-Con that took place in the basement of a synagogue in Brooklyn. And that lasted a couple of years, and it was very DIY. And now Miriam is kind of picking up the torch, but she has professionalized it in ways that I didn't honestly imagine were possible. First of all, she's absolutely brilliant. She's the nicest person. She may be the most photogenic person I've ever met in my life. So if you have the opportunity to take a selfie with her, do so. Just don't have any vanity because she's going to look better than you do in the photo. I'm sorry, that's just the way it goes. And she's also a fan and a student of the sequential storytelling form. And she has put together an amazing exhibit that I haven't had the opportunity to see yet, but I've heard from many people who have that it's expansive and quite wonderful on Jewish comics and sequential art. And she is putting together, she's launching JewCE, which is the Jewish Comics Experience, and that will take place on November 12th at this museum that we're still looking up.
It is
and
the Center
do you have
for
the name yet?
Yes, it is the Center for Jewish History, NYC.
Thank you. Center for Jewish History in NYC. And it will be a day that is very much what it sounds like. We will have panels, 1-hour panels throughout the day. There will be an artist's alley with booths and tables of Jewish people who are into comics in one way or another sharing their wares. And of course, the most important part, which is the interpersonal aspect, being able to schmooze and mix it up with comics professionals and fans alike. And I honestly did not know that there were that many people who were into Jewish comics, both professionally and as fans. And I'm sure I will discover even greater layers to it when I have the fortune of attending. And I am the moderator of one panel, and what did I title the panel? Something like Holy Text,
I was looking
which is
at
about
the panels.
translating our sacred texts like the Tanakh, the Jewish Bible, and the Talmud and other classic Jewish foundation texts into comics and graphic novels. And I'll be talking to some other people who have done it, and I myself am doing quite a bit of that right now.
That's fantastic. It's definitely going to be something I'm going to try and port my mom towards, because I'm Jewish. I'm Ashkenazi as well, and my parents appreciated comics. They read some growing up, and they tolerated my obsession with Spider-Man as a kid. But I think they've only really started to understand the gravity of what some of these things mean and the weight they hold to the various generations in recent times.
And the reason that this topic, I think, is so attractive right now is obviously Marvel has taken over the universe. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is now our universe. And if we can take the power of those characters that were created by Jewish people back in the day and bring them full circle to supporting and engaging people in and showing what's wonderful about Judaism, then I think that we have fulfilled a very sacred mission.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Despite my Jewish background, it's not the teachings and whatnot, not the biggest part of my life. I kind of ducked out after my bar mitzvah because it just wasn't my life, but this has kind of been my way to reconnect with my roots. Considering how, the fruit of our forefathers, for lack of a better term, has disseminated in the popular culture to an extent. That's why I try and shove Mr. Miracle by Tom King and Mitch Gerards into the hands of everybody I know and be like, hey, the guy that this is, homaging kind of made half the characters you know and love, and trying to connect to them through that.
Yep. Yeah. So from Siegel and Schuster and Bob Kane to Jack Kirby and Stan Lee to Greg Rucka today and Brian Michael Bendis and myself, we form, and let's not forget Eisner in between, who coined the phrase graphic novel. We form a very interesting line that you can trace not only in the development of the comics and sequential art form, but also in the way that it began as a way for Jewish people to express themselves without being overtly Jewish, in some cases by running away from Judaism, trying to escape it and assimilate in a way. I mean, that's what Superman is, after all. Clark Kent is, this is the way you see me, but the real person that I am is Superman. And then in the Marvel age, you have the Jewish stand-in characters, as it were, who give up their secret identities. Iron Man, for example, when he says at the end, spoiler alert, of Iron Man, the first Iron Man movie, and I haven't had a chance to ask the director about this, but it's a good question for him. When he says, I'm Iron Man, is that a way of saying, you know what, we've matured in society to the point where Jewish people don't have to hide anymore. We can show who we really are. And that comes, and that pays off now with the Jewish graphic novels that I'm doing, the Passover Haggadah graphic novel, and now the Koren Tanakh line of graphic novels, where we're literally taking the entire Jewish, we're planning on it, let's see if I survive the experience, we're taking the entire canon of the Jewish Bible, what we sometimes call the Old Testament. For Jews, it's the Only Testament, and translating them all into a series of graphic novels, and we are only using the original words. So the text is going to be the dialogue, is going to be the narration, because we feel that if these books have, and they have, subsisted for these thousands of years, there must be something great about it, and we may not carry the wisdom in our heads anymore to be able to understand it. It's a little far removed from our current cultural zeitgeist in terms of the text, but if we combine it with illustrations, sequential illustrations that bring out the textual meaning, the literal meaning of the Hebrew in English translation, and also the subtextual meaning. What's behind it? What are the history? What's the allegory? What are the interpretations? If we can combine all that together, then people like you, for example, who want to reconnect, but using modern media in order to be able to do it, will finally have the means to do it in a very authentic way.
I'm definitely going to be buying every single entry in this, no matter how many it takes, because
It'll make a nice bookshelf.
It will.
Do I have, we got to do a little show and tell. Oh, here we go. Okay, so this is the first one right here. So this is the Passover Agadah graphic novel.
Awesome.
We open to pretty much any page. Let's see if we can find a good example page for you here. Oh, you know what? So what do we have here? We have the Hebrew and the transliteration, because we do not presume that everybody can read Hebrew. So we have the phonetically translated English on one side. There you go. And on the other side, you have our original English translation, a modern, easy to comprehend translation that is built into the sequential storytelling. And we have an entire narrative. The Passover Agadah is actually not a narrative. You think it's the story of the Exodus, and certainly that's a part of it. But what it really is kind of a Wikipedia page, a compendium of all of Jewish knowledge. And it's drawn originally from, no pun intended, from the Talmud, and that source text of Jewish wisdom. And you go from page to page, and sometimes it's also like a time hopping story. So some pages you're in modern day, sometimes you're 2,000 years ago in the Roman era, sometimes you're 4,000 years ago in what you mentioned, the forefather era. Sometimes you even jump to the future. You go back to the future, to borrow from my old colleague, Bob Gale. And by putting all this together and wrapping it around with a framing device, you get to see the entire history and wisdom, philosophy, scholarship in one readable story from cover to cover. And of course, that's accompanied by a delicious, sumptuous meal in which we say, they tried to kill us, we survived, let's eat.
I feel like I do that every day.
Right? And bringing it back to Juice and the Jewish Comic Con experience, these are some of the topics that we will be discussing and debating, I'm sure. But ultimately, it's about the fun. As Miriam Mora says, we want to celebrate the joy. We want to be able to put aside our altercations and aggression for one day and be able to celebrate together the love that we have for the medium. And the medium is far more than superheroes. When you come, you will be amazed by the breadth of imagination and the depth of theme that is represented by Jewish creators and Jewish comics. And you mentioned before that I am a Jewish cartoonist. I am. I have a weekly comic strip that I've been doing for more years than I'm going to tell you right now. And I do publish them in some of the few remaining newspapers that are out there. And mostly you can check them out on Instagram and Facebook at Jewish Cartoon. Jewish Cartoon. Please be my follower. Won't you be my follower?
I'll make sure we link all of that in the video or the description. Thank you so much for your time. I think you touched on pretty much everything I wanted to ask about regarding Juice.
Well, there's one thing that we haven't talked about yet, and that's your t-shirt.
Oh, yeah. Good old Batman Forever.
Right, it's behind. You have to scooch a little bit to the side so we can see it from the back of the mic. There we go. Oh, I wish I had run upstairs and get mine. We could have worn the same t-shirt.
Dang.
That would have been the ultimate dad faux pas.
Honestly.
Right. So I had a wonderful experience on that movie, Batman Forever, because I reached out to Joel Schumacher's office to offer to be a resource for them as they were developing that movie. And, or no, it wasn't Batman Forever. It was Batman and Robin. Maybe it was Batman Forever. No, I think it was Batman and Robin. I think that's what it was. Batman and Robin.
Both classics.
The fourth one. And they put me in touch with Akiva Goldsman, and he came to the offices, and we had some wonderful times meeting and talking Batman and everything else. And he called me when the movie was coming out, and he said it's probably not exactly the movie that you imagine, but there will be a series of scenes that you will see in there between Bruce and Alfred, and I think you'll appreciate it. And just know that you were influential in bringing about that aspect of the interpersonal relationship there. I'm paraphrasing very liberally right now, going back 30 years in my memory. And Akiva is one of the people that Joel mentored. And my experience with Joel is that he was the nicest guy in the world, and he was extraordinarily generous in giving of his time and talent to be able to mentor and give opportunities to the next generation of talent. And there are probably a lot of people walking this planet right now who owe their careers in some way to Joel Schumacher. May he rest in peace. And that's something that I aspire to do as well. That I'm hoping to be able to continue building my Jewish graphic novel initiative. And one of the aspects of that is going to be to provide a mentoring platform for the next generation of creators who want to do what I do, which is apply the graphic novel and comics medium to Judaism. So stay tuned, TOONED, for that. And of course, you can do that on all the socials.
Fantastic. I'll be definitely doing that. Couple more questions. Your Haggadah graphic novel. How widespread is that going to be available in bookstores? Can I get my local comic shop to order it?
An interesting question. I suppose you can. It should be available. It's not going to be a diamond listing.
Okay.
But the best thing to do is just go to, I think it's jewishcartoon.com/ hold on, I'll tell you in a second. I have it here. Especially for you, we've got to get you an autographed copy.
I wouldn't be opposed.
Oh, that's easy. It's just jewishcartoon.com/Passover order. And it will take you to an order form and you're good to go. And if you want the follow-up, the Esther graphic novel, then it's just jewishcartoon.com/Esther order.
Awesome.
And if you forget any of that, just email me, jewishcartoon@gmail.com.
All right. Thank you so much. I guess one last question. You mentioned that some scenes in Batman Forever involving Bruce and Alfred were inspired by your input to an extent. Do you happen to have
Batman and Robin, but yeah.
I'm sorry, my brain. Do you happen to know which ones they were?
Well, there's a whole thing with Alfred dying of some kind of disease.
Oh, I knew it. Here's this one. It's AIDS, but it's not AIDS because Joel Schumacher's
right.
gay,
It's like, Hodgkin's disease or they invented some kind of a disease.
Yeah.
And they are very warm scenes between a surrogate father and a surrogate son, in which the two of them really explore what they mean to each other. And I know, to borrow your word, that movie is heavily maligned, but I've got to say, those scenes are very emotional, and I don't know anywhere else in all of the live-action Batman movies where you really have Alfred and Bruce opening up to each other about what they mean to each other. So I give Akiva a lot of credit for writing that and for pushing for it and to Joel and pushing for it to not get lost on the cutting room floor.
That's pretty phenomenal. Thank you for being part of the domino effect for that.
Yeah, I mean, for whatever little effect that I had.
Yeah.
But that's a very Jewish scene or set of scenes that you have over there. The father and son and Pirkei Avot and the wisdom of parents passing it down to their children, and also supporting their children in whatever direction they are going to go in. Because as I always say about my own children, hopefully for the first 18 years, I gave you a good grounding that will enable you to go on and live a moral and fulfilling life. And I'm happy to give you advice past that point, but now my job is done, and now it's up to the next generation to take it further, which is what I'm hoping to do again with the Jewish Graphic Novel Initiative. And I think that's a great place to land.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, Gorf. Mr. Gorfinkel, Jordan, whatever you want me to call you.
Gorf it is. Frog awesome. Backwards.
That's so good. All right. Shalom, my mensch. I'm sorry if that's ridiculous.
Shalom and Shabbat Shalom and Shalom al Yisrael. May we see peace in our time to the Jewish people and to everybody who is, well, everybody. It should be everybody.
Facts.